A pleasure to meet y'all at last, and welcome back to Super Foam Flying on HJN Season 5. And, for the record, there's plenty that I've gotten right now. And I'm especially, well, I don't know if I'd say I'm excited about this one in particular, but here it comes. Well, it's time for the Rebel Secrets and Spies Courage Crossbow right here. Its bigger brother, of course, or sister I should probably iterate, because the Courage Crossbow, as you can see right here, is sitting on the wall. This is in fact a larger sibling known as the Codebreaker, so let's try not to get confused here. So this one's the Codebreaker, right here, Courage, just to iterate it for good. But above all that, with the things that relate to crossbows and all that good stuff, this one doesn't fire the bolts that you would expect to see on most crossbow blasters in more recent years. Instead, it just shoots darts, as you can see. These are the Wild Edition darts. They're basically color-coded to fit the Wild lineup, which includes blasters like the Parsonage and Trailblazer, which you can see up towards the top of the screen right now. But in any case, though, the Codebreaker, it pretty much is a decent concept to try and give us a crossbow-esque feel to what we could probably get if we were to shoot darts instead of actual arrows or bolts, as most of these arrow-like ammunition have been called in recent years. But in this particular case, let's just say it probably could have been done a lot better. Because as you just saw, I primed the blaster. This purple side grip right here, which actually feels pretty solid and comfortable to hold on to. In a similar way to other blasters that operate in this way, like the Ultra 3, they do have some really nice side grips that you can hold on to as a way to prime. But of course, simply prime it like that. And what will happen is that this catching mechanism you see here on the sides that can fold downward, it catches the string that you see right here. It pulls it back to the back position right here where it gets locked in. And what will happen here is that it'll catch onto the dart. The dart that's loaded into the chamber is then grabbed a hold by the string and then can simply be fired by pulling on the trigger. So that's basically just the gist of how it functions in terms of priming and firing. But other than that, I don't really see much else to iterate here. It's the same old, pump, fire, repeat. This kind of process, while simple as it is, it doesn't always work the way you probably would, because there's been a couple notable moments, especially if you watch Distance Gauge Part 2, where the catch has not automatically sprung back into its normal resting position, because it turns out that you have to have the grip right here pumped all the way like this, nice and firmly, so that way the catch automatically springs back into its upright position so it can grab a hold onto the string. Otherwise, as you can see right here, this is basically what it looks like if it were not in its resting position, because what happens is this part right here, this little track that it nestles on, it basically comes down to a little dip where the string has to go to in order to basically get to the locking mechanism in the back and then catch onto the dart. So pretty much like that. And then it fires and the spring will nestle back into place like so, where the catching mechanism should automatically spring back up and grab a hold onto it again like so. So that's pretty much just what that is. So that's a bit of a minor problem, to say the least. Not to mention the bow arms. They are pretty darn big for what they are. And it's well over a foot in terms of width alone on this whole part. It probably isn't the worst sort of moment that these giant bow arms might get in the way. Like, for example, if you're aiming like this, you might wedge it into a doorway of some sort, or basically in a space where you can never truly get this thing to fit correctly. So these arms, I can't really be sure if they're supposed to be this big as a way to power the darts, but in any case though, it just seems a little too excessive to have ginormous bow arms expand from the blaster's overall girth, because looking from back here, as you can see, that's only a few inches of girth, which is pretty nice, I'll give it that. It's not really like Desolator quality in terms of how thin the blaster is profile-wise, but it's not really to say that it's supposed to be the best in the whole world, because there's been better options out there. So the bow arms basically just add so much width to it that almost seems unnecessary. You'd probably have to hold it like this in order to get it to fit through certain tight spots. So that's probably another big con I'd have to identify here. You also have a tactical rail on the top, which, as you can see, is pretty small actually. It's yet another one of those cases where it's probably not the worst, but the tactical rail, as you can see, just by holding it out like this, from end to end, is only about this long. That's not even 5 inches, which it probably can't fit a good majority of different accessories and the like scopes and dart holders. Normally you'd have to have a little extra space for that kind of option. And then of course, the one other thing is the fact that, well, holding the blaster like so, it's fair enough, at least for a more feminine design, which is supposed to be marketed towards female Nerf fans out there. But in the case of myself, so just looking at this, it's probably not the worst, but I feel like the stock could have been a little larger in size to accommodate my huge shoulders. And the grip, honestly, it's okay for what it is, but it certainly doesn't need to be smaller than usual, just so it can fit any adult-sized hand possible. So that's pretty much just the cons that I have listed out there. But again, the pros on this one, including the fact that this is a crossbow that can shoot darts. It's got a nice, comfortable side grip down here, which is pretty smooth for what it is. And firing the blaster is nice and easy. And I also really love the color scheme on this one, with a combination of purple, lavender, orange, and cyan, which I really ought to say, that's a great color combo. Not to mention dark gray and some hot pink. The trigger is basically the only placement that actually has hot pink on it. Unless, of course, you're willing to count the Rebel logo on the side right here. And then, of course, there's this counter, as you can see. You basically just use this as a way to mark down. Well, I never quite understood exactly what this counter is meant for. But if it's supposed to be some sort of secret that this blaster has, then, well, I guess I won't really have to have a whole lot to worry about, so I'll just leave it as it is. If it's supposed to be like a safe of some sort that the blaster has, I'd be curious enough to find out what it is. But anyways, if you want to see more, go down on my channel to make sure that you like, subscribe, comment, follow me on social media, and stay on the Hollywood side.